inaugural edition of the Eureka Podcast. I've got with me Scott Challen. I've got me, and for those who follow us regularly, I've got my boy on the couch. If we can see him, it's a bit hard on that screen. JJ, the co-star, the real star, much prettier face than me. Just before I welcome Scott into it, I'd just like to do a bit of an introduction. I've just found out Scott was born and raised in West Australia, joined the RAF as a young man after doing a bit of work, went to Queensland with the RAF. After that, had to come out because of an injury, ended up starting his own building company, has been killing it there ever since, and is now a true and blue proud Queenslander, poor bastard. And unless you've been living under a rock, you would see that Scott's been very active on the political and protest front. And the reason I've approached him about coming on, I've been following, he doesn't know this yet, I've been following Scott for quite a while. I've been very entertained by his TikTok videos and his social media stuff. One, he's a larrikin, which I love. He's a straight shooter, which I love. I don't agree with everything, which is fine, because I was raised, if you don't agree, you go down the pub and you talk to the guy and you sort it all out and then you move on. He's obviously a patriot, and that word gets abused a lot. There's an old saying, and I'll bring Scott into this as we get into it, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Now, I've copped a bit of criticism for bringing Scott on. I'm not too sure why. I think it's with your MFA involvement, Scott, but whatever. But people out there, and I know a few of you said, can you come on and chat? At the end of this, we'll give you a chance to chat. I haven't done my Bible read in my rant today, so I'm going to do that for Scott. I've picked out a few verses for Scott, so he might be a bit nervous about what I'm going to say. And then we'll get into a discussion. So I just want to put forward some of the opinions I've got on what Scott's doing, what the greater protest marches are doing, general opinion on the politics of the day. And Scott is more than welcome to ask me questions and we'll answer yours. And unlike the ABC, Scott, we're not going to edit or take on time. I do have to get going at 5, so we got 2 good hours if we need it to be able to go. And then for those who aren't able to watch it at 3 o'clock, we'll obviously publish this unedited going forward. So, mate, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me, Bob. Great to be here. Big fan of the work that you do. Really enjoy what you present and appreciate the opportunity, of course.
Mate, the only way we can all get that back, and I know you got a flag there. I've got mine in the corner. I don't usually have a split screen too often, buddy. It's usually 3. So usually my flag's prominent position, but there's so much. One of the reasons I wanted to get you on is, one, if you look at some of your TikTok videos, you do have your rough edges, which I think is great. Some people don't. I don't care. That's very entertaining for me. But there's also something behind that. Some people could look at some of your TikToks, and in social media, unfortunately, there's a 30-second attention span. And they write you off very quickly if they think you can be abrasive, talk the word Nazi, rough edge, you might swear a little bit. I don't care if you do, by the way, because I'll drop probably a few words. But what they miss out on when they're watching you, and what I've seen over the years, mate, I'm not kissing your ass on this, I'm genuine, is you have a very nuanced understanding, and we're just talking about this before, business, of the economy, what makes it tick. You're a businessman, you're employing people, you're in the building trade. And as I just said to you, my dad was a builder, and his opinion was the building industry was the canary in the coal mine for the economy. I still think that's very true. And there's been some concerning stories from my end about building companies going bust. I think that's a bad sign. And it was interesting yesterday that the Libs got off net zero, thank God, because I think that's playing a big part in it. But they don't see some of your more intellectual parts. And when you go down that road, I find some of your comments quite fascinating. So I just think we shouldn't write people off. But that's one of the big reasons, mate, I've got you on. And anytime you want to interrupt me, feel free. I'm not one of those ones who interrupt, but I can babble on a little bit.
No worries at all, Bob. Thanks very much for the very kind, a summary of what I do there. And look, the TikTok content was really what kind of kicked this off for me. It was whinging at my kids who said to me, Dad, why don't you make something on social media about it? That was the very first TikTok. It got 800,000 views before the algorithm decided didn't like me, and that's kind of where we're at. I mean, I'd made some content on YouTube about fitness and stuff like that, and I always enjoyed speaking when I was younger. I probably always talked too much. And I always felt kind of reasonably comfortable doing it. But certainly the TikTok videos gave me the opportunity to learn to be comfortable with the camera, and also to learn to put together a cohesive argument or a position around something. The colourful language was really, I've been in the building industry most of my adult life, and this is how everyone speaks around me every single day. I could be sitting in a boardroom, I could be with a supplier having a multi-million-dollar conversation, or I could be talking to the apprentices on site or the tradies. And, there's different levels and different places to talk. And one of the things that the audience has grabbed onto with what I've done was grabbing those tradies, because despite what everyone thinks, they don't vote Labor. If you're in the same thing, right. But the majority of tradies in this country do not vote Labor. And so, I know that because I've been employing these guys for years. And, and so really I connected with that kind of audience. And I think it kind of created a bit of a different swell there on TikTok, because now I watch the videos and everyone's swearing on them. So,
mate, you've only got to watch the Yanks over there. They're just tearing themselves apart. I shouldn't watch it, but like those, I get a bit of flack, and no doubt we'll get into this. I'm Australia first. I'm not Australia only. I listen a lot. I understand people that are Australia only, but I think you got to think past that a little bit too. But everything we do, even if we are dealing with people from outside Australia, it's got to be for an Australian first content, for example. But I don't think we can just bottle ourselves up. So I tend to listen to a lot of stuff from overseas. And I think, for example, what's happening in England is a real concern, because I think that's getting bad over there. It could hit our shores, and we could use that as a foreboding and make sure it doesn't hit our shores. I do agree with you with a lot of the tradies not voting Labor. I think a lot of people get that mixed up. But I'm not so sure now. My guess is they lean centre-right, but if they're like all of us on the centre-right, we're bloody confused on which horse to back. And I have issues with just about every single political party, every single thing. And for me, I would call myself a sensible centre-right. I could be wrong. Some people might argue that. But I don't go too far right. I definitely don't go to the left. I just have conservative centre-right values. And I just can't. Yesterday gave me a bit of hope. And I haven't voted Liberal now for, since Abbott got knifed. And even before then, it'd be interesting. I've got to get your story about why he got kicked out, mate. That could be entertaining. But yesterday was the first time since Abbott got knifed that some conservatives, and I've talked with a few of them, some conservatives finally won the day in that party room of the Liberal Party. And I know everyone likes to hate on them, and people won't like me saying it. I've hated on them myself. But the shortest avenue, I think the first step for this country to get itself back is to get rid of these, and I'm going to swear, to get rid of these fucking Marxists who are in the ALP out of our governments and off those government benches. And then we can start trying to change the way. The quickest avenue to that, if that's One Nation, great. If that's the Liberals, great. If that's through your protest rally, great. But we've got to find that path, because the longer they stay in, the more damage they're going to do. And it could become my concern, if they're in too long, how much damage they could do. They're already doing plenty. So, but look, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So I've got to get my Bible reading, mate, before because I've got to get this part in so I can do all my sinfulness at the end of it. So bear with me, mate. Everyone who follows me sort of knows this anyway, but I've picked out every podcast or episode. This is a Charlie Kirk tribute. So ever since he got assassinated, I've been doing this. So I'm no evangelist, so just bear with me. There are different kinds of spiritual gifts. This is from Corinthians 12, 4 through 13. But the same Spirit gives them. There are different ways of serving, but the same Lord is served. There are different abilities to perform service, but the same God gives ability for all for that particular service. I think that line particularly applies to you, Scott. The Spirit's presence is shown in some way in each person for the good of all. The Spirit gives one person a message full of wisdom, while to another person the same Spirit gives a message full of knowledge. One and the same Spirit gives to faith to one person, while to another person he gives the power to heal. The Spirit gives one person the power to work miracles, to another the gift of speaking God's message, and to yet another the ability to tell the difference between the gifts that come from the Spirit and those that do not. To one person he gives the ability to speak in strange tongues, and to another he gives the ability to explain what is said. but it is one and the same Spirit who does all this. As he wishes, he gives a different gift to each person. Christ is like a single body which has many parts. It is still one body, even though it is made up of different parts. In the same way, all of us, whether Jews or Gentiles, whether slaves or free, have been baptized into the one body by the same Spirit, and we have all been given the one Spirit to drink. I think that's a really, really relevant passage to what we're going through as a country. So, yeah, and I read that a few weeks ago. There's another one, but I think we've got a bit to talk about, so I won't go. I was going to do two.
Well, it's funny because my journey to Christianity was in a Pentecostal church where they all spoke in tongues, mate, which I found completely strange at the time. But it wasn't until I found my calling that certainly it wasn't an uncomfortable place for me to be after a while. So.
Are you still with that church?
No, completely. I'm not a regular churchgoer at all, but my faith is still strong, and that'll never deviate. That's completely in my heart, and it's never going to change.
Yeah, no. So I was very much like that. My only tip to everyone, and as you get older, you probably get a little bit wiser. So I'm hoping that's the case with me. I had 2 years ago, I met with a guy, very wealthy guy. I coached his son. I had to go around to his place to coach him for basketball. Lovely family, devout Catholics. And one thing I have trouble with my faith is the ability to pray. I still do. I don't think I get a lot out of it like some others seem to. So whether that's like it says in there, that's just their gift as opposed to mine, I'm not too sure. It doesn't impact my faith any, but I've always found it curious that some people get far more out of their prayer than others. So this guy, it was funny. They invited me to stay for dinner, and they actually said grace. I've never said grace in my life, even though my mum was a devout Catholic. So I'm sitting around this table with these strangers holding hands saying grace. It was a bit weird. But after we'd finished dinner, I said, how do you go about that? He goes, what do you mean? Prayer. I said, I just don't get it. I don't get anything out of it. Mate, that led to a 3-hour conversation over cognacs. Didn't leave there till 1 o'clock that morning. It was actually one of the most fascinating things. It changed my whole outlook a bit on that. And like he went to church every Sunday and a couple of times a week. And this guy's like a multimillionaire. He's got his franchise all over the globe. I thought, well, it's good enough for him. It's good enough for me. So I've done my best in the last 2 years to try and get to church regularly, like most weekends if I can. And if I miss going, and I actually started saying the rosary a lot. So I actually found I still didn't quite get what I want. What it did give me, though, was a lot of inner peace, a little bit, and a lot of hope, actually. And this was just after COVID. And I just think that's something that we've lost in the country a little bit. Like when you were younger, when I was younger, we had politics. You'd vote in an election. You wouldn't think about it for 3 more years. We always were hopeful about the future of the country. I think we've lost a lot of that hope now. And I find a lot of that hope through the Catholic faith or whatever faith, the Christian faith. I think that helps a lot. I'm not too sure that does the same for you, but the more I read out of that, this is a book my mum gave me to book before she died. So it's about 40 years old. And it's just, I did it when Charlie Kirk got assassinated. It's got an extract for every day. What I've found amazing since I've done that, nearly every extract, except for yesterday, had a pertinent meaning to what I was about to speak about. And I'm not planning it. I'm not bullshitting. Some people feel like Tucker Carlson say I've got a demon. But I actually am finding it really pertinent. It's just actually waking up the Christian faith in me a little bit more. So it's been a really good exercise. And what you said before, I was very nervous when I first started doing this. But the more I started doing it, the more comfortable I got. Now, as you can see, I can just babble on the more I can. So, but that is my little bit of version. Tell us a bit about, I hear you talk a lot about with these rallies and the protests. So we'll start on that. And I heard you this week about your movement. When you say movement, what are you talking about?
Well, I'll just touch back a second on what you said there about prayer.
Oh, yeah, go. Yeah.
Just with regards to that, right? Like I find faith to be a very personal thing, but I've become more outward on that, especially in the last 12 months, because I've found that having the armor of God on me, that I call it, my faith is actually what helps keep me together. And prayer is really easy because it's just a sense of gratitude. And so I find that if I never really struggle to communicate that faith.
Oh, really? So you're the ones I'm jealous of.
All I do is just reel off to myself the things that I'm grateful for, and I'm thankful for that, the gratefulness and thankfulness. And if I kick off my day with that, you've seen a lot of my content in the gym. That's my place. That's where I go, and I commit my day and my gratitude to God, and get myself balanced and make some whingy TikToks, and then deal with all the business, mate. So that's how we kick off. But just to backtrack a little bit there with regards to what you were saying, faith is a strong thing for me, and it'll never change. It'll be like that till the day I die, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So there you go.
Well, he's coming another big company. Trust me, we're going to get to the elephants in the room in a minute, in a while. But there's another reason. There are different abilities, but the same God gives ability to offer the Spirit's presence. The Spirit's presence is shown in some way in each person for the good of all. The Spirit, there was one particular line there I thought was particularly pertinent to yourself. The way when I read that, and one of the reason I did it, the reason I did that was before you'd even accepted to come on, the person I thought about with that was you. And the reason I thought that is which we just talked about before we started the live stream, I just watched that clip of you with those young guys trying to get the message to Trump. And I saw that, and it wasn't even you trying to get the message to Trump. One of the biggest problems I think we've got as a country is men finding their way in life at the moment. So, I'm a baby boomer. I've been coaching young men now for 35 years. I've had, for many of them have been like a second father. So even though I don't have family, I do. And, I put an awful lot of my life's work in to try and mentor and help young men. And I can pretty much identify someone who's got a talent to reach out to those younger generations. I watched that clip and I thought that's the talent that God's given Scott. The way you connect with those young guys, I think is amazing. But my only warning as an older man to you, which I've had to be careful of, is that comes with a heavy weight of responsibility as well. Because you've now got to mentor those guys into what is a positive future, And my concern, and we'll definitely be getting into this. My concern with a lot of young men, they're getting sucked down rabbit holes that aren't going to take them to a positive future for themselves, for their mates, for their country, and even longer term with what we're talking about with their faith. Even their soul. I mean. At the end of the day, the most important thing has got to be God, family, and country. Because if you sacrifice everything for your country, but you lose your soul, if we're both Christians and we've done that, well, we're fucked, once we die. Yeah. So that I've found that over my journey with young people, and you would have young people, I've no doubt you've got that you employ as apprentices and all that, and all these ones that come to rally. How are we going to mentor them? How are we going to guide them? That's why I was really rapt. That you divorced yourself from the March for Australia. I had issues with that with the NSN links, and you came out really strong this week. Got a funny story to tell you in a minute.
We came out strong at the first event, mate. Like we've never wavered in our position on that. We've never been wishy-washy. So.
I've got flack for saying that, as we all do on social media. If you're gonna get on social media, be ready for the flack. But even though I didn't go from. I wasn't opposed to it. I just couldn't bring myself. I think I said to you before, I've got parents who fought in World War II, grandparents who fought in World War I. They went through the Depression. We were raised with all the stories from the war. And I'm not talking from TV and media. I'm talking stories from what Dad brought back from that, what his cousins and uncles brought back. They were any totalitarian. It was just nearly unanimous. Now,
did any of them ever tell you that they went and served for white Australia?
No, not one.
And I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s and 90s. There was a lot of World War II veterans around still when I was a young fella.
Yeah.
Because I was obsessed with the military and I always wanted to
same here.
I was always annoying the piss out of every single one of them I could get a hold of and asking questions about the war. And about their involvement, and what it was like, and what did you do? Did you shoot anyone? And questions that most you wouldn't normally ask a veteran, but when you're a kid and you've got no filter. And I remember clearly asking a lot of them, why did you go? Or, what was your reasons? Or how did you join? And not one of them ever, and I must have had gosh, over those years, 100 conversations with World War II veterans. Not one of them ever said to me, I went and served for white Australia. No one ever said that.
They went and fought for each other. I mean, this is the bullshit.
Each other, for their families. Hitler bad, Britain good.
With Dad, because he fought in New Guinea, the ones he hated the most, hated till the day he died, which I totally get, was the Japanese. Hated them. Yeah. And every Australian from that generation
didn't drive a Japanese car, mate, ever. Until the day they died. It was not a chance.
Dad served up in New Guinea. If anyone is watching it, what they should do, I don't know whether you've read him, but you might have with what you're saying before, is Les Caroline. I read his book on Gallipoli and the Western Front. Amazing read. So they went over for all the reason they normally did. But once you get in, and you would probably know a lot of this from serving in the military, once you're in that battle, once you're in the heat, the fog of war, the only person you can rely on is the person next to you. The king's not coming to save you. The general's not coming to save you. But that mate you've got in your trench with you, and this is what Les Caroline brought in. This is where mateship became such a big thing in the Australian psyche and culture. You needed that mate next to you. It didn't matter what God he believed in. It didn't matter what ideology he believed in. If he didn't have your back and you didn't have his, he was fucked. And so were you. And they lost a bunch of their mates. And that's where this mateship thing came from. And I would say we've lost that a lot. And a lot of that has got to do with the mass immigration. A lot of that has got to do that we probably haven't been in a serious war where there's been a sizable portion of the population go. My old man, I'll give you a story about my old man from World War II. When we raised the war with him, he would never talk about it, never. So me and my little brother, we figured out the one time we'd talk about it is when all the family would come over for, weddings, Easter, Christmas, we'd have big dinners. Well, back then, big families weren't an unusual thing. We had 10 in our family. Dad had 11 in his and Mum had 9 in hers. And up the road, there was a family of 15. It was just sort of the norm back then. This is in the 60s and 70s, so the real baby boomer stuff. And so we'd have massive family gatherings, which were fantastic. But that was the one time Dad would talk about his war experience because he'd have a few, he'd loosen up. But what would happen is all the cousins that were Dad's age and that would come back. So they all fought in the war. And they'd all get round after dinner. And the mums would go one way and the dads would come the other. And me and my little brother, we would just get under because we were pretty young. We'd just pretty much get whatever edge around the table where we couldn't be noticed. And we just stayed silent and we listened to their stories. I bet you can't pick the story that they all talked about, the troops they all talked about in New Guinea, every single one of them. And this will give a lie to your white nationalism. It was the American Negro troops. They loved them. Loved them. And they every time they got together, they would bring up a different story about them. The typical Aussies, they got all, they blew up, how they have the latrines, they dig a ditch and they put the latrine over the top of it. They put this sort of, I don't know what there's dynamite, but they basically got all the Negroes first got over there and they said, where do we go to loot? And they pointed them over there. So this is the Aussies telling them. They all had to go. They're all busing. So apparently like a dozen of them went to this loot. But the Aussies had set it up with some minor explosions. Apparently they blew it up and shit just went along. And after that, the Aussies and the African-American guys got on famously. So they all thought it was hilarious. But Dad, like with films and everything like that, he was a big fan of American Negro actors. Even before, like I grew up in the 60s when they did all the social reform for all that and the social fight. Dad always spoke up for the American Negroes, and he actually also spoke up a lot for the Indigenous. He saw the problems they had. He didn't like the way they were living because he had to, I don't know whether you know Swan Reach down here, Lake Tyers, very big Indigenous demographic, and he had to go and rebuild their buildings and refurbish them when they'd lived in there. So he had issues with them, but he also saw their issues. So none of those guys were racist. None of them. They saw the faults. And people who bring that white nationalist stuff up, what was the generation that voted to accept the Indigenous as citizens? What was the nation what was the generation that voted to give them the vote? That was that World War II generation. So that just straight away proves a lie to the fact I've heard that argument. Well, they went to fight for white nationalism, white Australia, all that. Bullshit. It's not factual. And not one of those people making that has a a connection with someone from that era. I had connections with.
And look, this is one of the bigger things, right? Is that you've got a generation of kids here that haven't got that connection because all those World War II guys are gone. Most of the Vietnam era guys are almost gone
on the way out. Yeah,
and so your connection to this history is limited to who's teaching it, and if you're so enamored with the concept that someone is responsible for your disadvantage, which is a really easy sell in this economy right now, and as things get worse, and it will get worse, that's an easy sell. It's an easy sell to blame the brown person next to you, and people will prey on that. And history has shown that people have preyed on that because we have a weakness inside of us that makes us want to hate. It's easier to hate than to love. Yeah. And unless you're able to overcome that, you're going to point fingers. The reality is, though, this government and successive governments over the last 30 years have completely ruined your country. And it's not the brown guy's fault, but the government that let them in here. And so the conversation really has to be around dealing with the parasitic political class that's wrecked your country. And then once you've got a control of your country and your borders and the parasitic political class, by virtue of genetics, you will be by default the largest cohort in the country. It will probably be people of Anglo descent. So you kind of win genetically in the long term anyway. If you shut the borders and get a hold of your country, you'll probably be the dominant people here. So I always find it difficult to understand why the accelerationist view of it is to hurry it up, when really what we've got to do is just get a hold of the country. And once you've got a hold of that, then you can deal with these problems.
Well, the biggest issue with me on immigration, it's not whether people are black, brown, Asian, whatever. We're just in the demographics down here in Melbourne. I don't know what it's like up in Brisbane. It definitely has changed, and I can see why that's confronting for a lot of people. I go around with my basketball business, and we do a lot of clinics at different schools. And I tell you the thing I hate most about immigration is this multiculturalism bullshit. There should be one culture. And I don't care whether you're black, white, Asian, whatever, but once you immigrate here, you become an Aussie.
Yeah,
and we used to be really...
It doesn't happen. It's not...
No, it doesn't.
And that's why the whole system is broken, Bob. It doesn't work.
Well, I'll disagree with you slightly there. And this is just from my experience.
Of course.
And this is... I was in Springvale, okay, and that is very much a Islamic, Chinese, Islander demographic. It is really spot the Aussie, which is not a big issue with me. I went to a school at McKinnon. It was virtually all Indian, Sri Lankan, Asian. Schools in Waverley are predominantly Asian. Schools in the Bayside region are predominantly Anglo. So you're still in these clumps. But I now coach because I work out of Stonington, and that's close to Mount Waverley. So I get a lot of the Indonesians, Vietnamese kids, Chinese kids. I've got one Sri Lankan kid who's second generation here. Now, seriously, if you close your eyes, all you hear is Aussie accents. These kids have been raised up. They love their sport. They love hanging out. They love going out with their mates. I'm just looking, if you take away all the other shit, I'm just looking at Aussie kids. They're still Aussie kids. That gives me a little bit of hope. And I deal with their parents, and some of these parents are 2 generations in. So their grandparents, for example, the Vietnamese or Indonesian ones, they came over here 2 generations ago. So they were born here. Their kids were born here. They're being raised here. And I see the Aussiness in them, okay? But they're getting – the problem we've got – I'll tell you the biggest problem. I don't even think it's our politicians. Who do you reckon our biggest problem is?
Well, you'll probably say it's the university sector or something like that.
No, I'm going to say it's the bloody media, because they don't call out these issues. And if I raise this on a mainstream media show, if you raised it, what would we be immediately labelled as?
Well, you'd be a far right Nazi racist.
Yeah. Well, it's an actual problem. I love a lot. I've caught my flag for defending the immigrant community too much. But they're the ones I deal with are an example of the immigrants we want coming in. They're highly skilled.
Shouldn't it be like, why are we calling them an immigrant community? Shouldn't they be an Australian community?
Well, 100%. I'm with you 100%. Yes.
So I struggle with that part of it, is the separatization of our people. And, they have a cultural enclave that protects themselves and looks after themselves. And now they have their own associations, the Hindu Association and the Islamic Association.
Now we're going to multiculturalism.
Lobby groups. These guys have lobby groups now. They have lending, they have finance, they have political arms, and they're taking control of your country. And they're taking control of the country, Bob.
That's the issue. You've hit it right on the head. And this is where I think you've got the ability. I mean, if you can reach out to the young ones, and I'm so happy, it gave me a really beating heart of joy when you did this, when you broke away from the MFA. And listen, I know there's some good people in the MFA, but there's also those links with the NSN, and I don't really want to waste too much time on the NSN. What I'm more excited about is by you doing that, I'm not too sure whether you even understand. I do, because I walk in their circles. You've opened yourself up to a whole new audience if you follow through on this.
So you've got the also copped a lot of criticism for it as well. Well,
you're going to if you're going to take a stand, you got to be prepared to get the flack. That's just part. This is the problem with our fucking politicians. And the reason I gave Susan Ley credit yesterday, they took a decision they were going to get cop flack for, and in a press conference, she, for the first time, and I don't know how long, someone stared them down about net zero. Not even Dutton did that. Dutton was too pissweak to do it. Susan Lane, I didn't think before yesterday these words would ever come out of my mouth. I don't know whether you saw it. Her last line in particular was brilliant. I couldn't give a shit, basically, what the UN, this is verbatim, I couldn't give a shit what the UN or the Paris Accord think. I'm more concerned about what this impact has on Australians. Yeah, but fucking hallelujah.
How many party meetings, how many membership meetings has she been to and heard this raised and ignored it all that for years, Bob? I'm not buying the sell anymore, because I think the Liberal Party is dead, mate. I think it's done and finished. I think the sooner it's a corpse in the ground.
I can accept that. We'll get onto your history with them in a minute.
Yeah.
But
it's not really my issue. It's the country's issue. The reason the country is up the shit, Bob, is because we haven't had a strong conservative leadership in this country for years now.
Okay, let me put a hypothetical by it, and I don't think it's actually a total hypothetical anymore after yesterday. So if the Conservative faction, because all these parties have their factions, the Libertarians have their factions, Greens have their factions, they all have factions. It's a bit like what I was saying before out of the thing. There's a whole bunch of different people with different gifts and different ideas. How do you bring them all together? My concern is more for the country than anything else. I couldn't give a rat's what political party it is. To me, the shortest route to change this country is to get the ALP out and a conservative centre-right government back in. And then we've got a chance. I'm not saying it's going to solve every freaking problem. It's not. The shortest route to that, I think, is at the moment a Liberal Party. If there was another option there, if there was a reform in Australia, great. I love Pauline Hanson. I love One Nation. But she does have a track record. When she gets people in her tent, they soon after leave. And I'm not too sure that there's enough experience in there that if they did manage to get government, which I don't think they would, but if they did, whether they have enough experience. The only way I'd be comfortable with that is if a bunch of the Conservatives MPs from the Nationals and the Libs joined ranks with her. That's what I'd like to see. But we've got to get a Conservative party that can defeat ALP. Now, after yesterday, the Conservatives, for the first time since Abbott, won the party room. So that gives me a little bit of hope. And right now, I'm going to grab whatever hope I can get. And that's why I was going back to you with your movement. Your movement, and this is something I don't know, I'm talking too much here, but your movement, what's it designed for? Is it designed to bring about a political party? Is it designed just to lobby politicians? What do you see your movement doing to get us to that point where we can get a centre-right conservative government again in this country?
Well, this movement has to be about creating an initiative and action to get people activated so that they're either participating in politics or taking more of an interest in it, or putting their money where their mouth is, and also putting their energy into something that aligns with the future of this country to help shape what this country is going to look like. The hardest thing about Australians, as you know, is to get them off their asses. We're an apathetic lot, and we have a very she'll be right attitude. That part of our Australian culture, the she'll be right part, has been forged over the last 2 centuries because generally we're a pretty cool, calm, collected lot. When the shit hits the fan, we try not to panic, and we'll deal with the situation as it unfolds. the feminisation of our society over the last 30 years, though, let's be clear about that, and I'm not going to pull punches on this because I've made plenty of content about it. The feminisation of our society has meant that we've become a very reactive and emotional country now. So instead of making rational decisions about the best way forward, we react, and everything's a panic, and it's all drama. And if there's anything that we've seen come out of the last couple of weeks with the split from Queensland and the MFA is way too much drama, way too much emotion, and way too dramatic. So if you're going to solve these problems, you need a balanced and reasonable and practical approach to it, tactical almost in my mind. So this movement is about getting people, first of all, August 31, we had to prove that we could get people off their butts. And for the first time since the COVID rallies, we actually got over 10, 15,000 people on the streets in Brisbane. I mean, you know, we expected 500 people, Bob, 500 people. We thought if we get 500, this is a win. You know, when the estimates were closer to 15, potentially more, we were like, holy cow. Now, we knew that we had to back it up with another event, and we had to do that reasonably quickly. October 19th, we did that. And, you know, despite the mainstream media telling you that 1,000 or 2,000 people turned up, the reality is Grey Street in South Bank is 1.4 kilometres long, and it was from top to bottom, completely full of Aussie Patriots and flags. And that's about 10,000 plus people. So, you know, when the mainstream media, who lie through their teeth and their buttholes, as we know, come out, and you talked about the media before, and pitch numbers at you, that look, they were just trying to spin the narrative or the control narrative that they do. That's their job. And so we know that we can pull people. We've registered thousands and thousands of people on our website to be involved in this. And now we know that there's enough strength and interest in that it justifies what we're going to do next. And that will be to build a lobby group that starts to influence the politics in Queensland and federally. Because Queensland is the state that has always been the balanced and centred, non-emotional approach to Australian politics. And that's where a strong conservative movement has always been based, and it will be again out of Queensland. And when I say conservative movement, I'm not talking about a wet, limp, moderate, civic nationalist view of that. I'm probably way more right of most conservatives, but I'm definitely not as far right as the NSN. But what I'm talking about here is strong, practical approaches to the future of our country that politicians have refused to do. You spoke about Susan Lay's courage yesterday and how you got some hope out of it, because for the first time since Abbott, you saw conviction potentially, but you also saw the courage to have a difficult conversation. If you're going to stand in front of the media, you better be prepared to have difficult conversations. Now, for me, Bob, like yourself, a bit of an older generation, my whole life has been defined by difficult conversations. I've had difficult conversations every single day of my life, and especially in business for the last 17 years. Now, what Susan Lay did was she finally had the difficult conversation. And that's the conversation that we've been waiting for a really, really long time, because in this overly feminized society, I want to avoid that conversation. I'll kick the can down the road a little bit more and just keep these people happy because I don't want to have that difficult conversation. Well, I'm done. I'm done with kicking the can down the road, and I'm sick of watching these people do that garbage. And from my perspective, I think that what this society needs to do is to put its big girl pants on and, you know, find some courage and go forward and have difficult conversations. And that's our goal up here in Queensland, mate. That's the goal of the movement.
Oh, no, look, I'm hearing it. Before we get a whole mountain of criticism, I'm assuming here when you say feminized, what did you say? Feminized impact or whatever we're having on society. Yeah, that means more of an attitude than being female versus female. Because I love a strong woman, by the way. If you've got a strong female leader, I reckon they're some of the best. But some of the crap, you know, like they had a picture of Albo a few weeks ago, and he got on there, and he's got, I don't know whether you watch much Question Time. So I'm lucky. I work from home a fair bit, so I can have Question Time on the background. I just put it on there more for entertainment, but maybe I'm a bit, what do they call it when you like a lot of pain and you just want to throw something at the TV? So I put myself through my own little bit of torture. But they manipulate now the screen so they've got the female members of parliament sitting right behind them. Yeah. And seriously, I wouldn't hire half these women and these men, because they've got the same sort of attitudes, to clean my toilet bowl. I mean, seriously, Oh, well, you certainly wouldn't employ them to help you run your company.
Look,
but they're running the freaking country.
I've been very blessed to have a fantastic marriage. And, between my wife and I, we have 4 beautiful daughters. I've been surrounded by women, outnumbered in this house that we live in for years. I have no sons. Yeah. And I've become very aware of a female and emotional response to things. My girls are great. Yeah. They've grown up. They've been educated to be very balanced and to try to take things, with a practical approach. But, what we see now, especially since COVID, and we're all aware of this during COVID, was really, really poor leadership, reactive leadership that led to the deaths of thousands of people. We're still dealing with the deaths of thousands of people. Suicides are still, you'll never find the data for that because you literally can't, not allowed to know. And we've got an epidemic of, economic collapse here, marriages falling apart. Everything in our society is structurally broken right now because of overreactive emotional decisions. Now, a lot of people will call me a sexist and a misogynist and all these type of things for saying a feminized society. But I'll be honest with you, Bob, ever since we started putting more women into leadership roles, you've got to admit things have started to get a lot worse and are certainly accelerating towards the end of the cliff. And I'll say it, Thelma and Louise style right now. We need to balance this out a little because I think the inability to have those difficult conversations has got us into a place where we have outweighed a measured, practical approach to the future.
Well, this is where the social media does come in handy because you can never have that conversation through mainstream media, and it's always dominated by the same personalities on mainstream media. Where it's the same bloody. If you get on to Sky News, they brought on yesterday. What's his name? The guy during the day. The during the day is not as bad as the ABC. Can't remember his name now. I'll remember it later. But they brought on that Fiona Scott, nitwit. She's just a nitwit after they decided to ban net zero. And she's just Labor light. And you could see she wanted to pan out on Tuesday and all that. Your party room, I coach a lot of sport, right? And it's very hard to get the balance right with all your players because all of them have different agendas. So it's like in a party room of the thing. The leaders sort of got to bring it together. And when you're the coach, you say, right, enough of the bullshit. This is what I want you to do. You go out there, you do it, and you accept your role because that's an important part of the role for the team. So you've got to go bloody do it. A bit like what was in that Bible reading. And it's the same thing that's got to happen within a political party. But nowadays, they had the one thing, and again, it sounds like I'm putting Susan Lay up on a pedestal. I'm not. She had one good day. There's another 364 days in the year she's got to get through, right? So I'm giving her credit, and I've been saying this to a lot of the people on my X feed. Just grab the win while you can grab the win. And who knows, if we all say well done, and this is the same thing out of sport, for example. So this is where I get mine, just like from your building thing. If I tell a player, and I've been critical of him for ages for him not doing a certain skill in the game, and he finally does it, I'll grab him, I'll put 2 arms around him, I say, fucking great job, mate, because I know that'll actually lift his confidence to keep going. If I bag him again, he's going to go back into his shell. So my attitude is, she's done something really good. Don't drag her down. Don't put her down. Let's see what she's capable of, because sometimes you never know what you can do until you do it. And yesterday she stared down that media. Now, if all she's going to do is cop flack, she'll go back into her shell, and that's not good for the country. So I'm not convinced by any way, shape or form. And if there's one person there that I am convinced by that will stare down and take the flack and keep going, that would be Pauline Hanson, and she's a woman. So that's why I'm trying to say it's not necessarily even about feminising society. If you want to talk about feminising society, one, look at frickin' Elbow. I mean, Jesus Christ. And number 2 down here, I don't know whether you've seen him, Tim Richardson. He's the local member. He's just in the next electorate to me. They gave him a special title, the Victorian Secretary for Changing Men's Behaviour. Now, if you looked at this, it's like he's a trans man. I'm sorry. He walks like a woman. He talks like a woman. If he came into a room full of your tradies, he would be laughed out straight away. How this guy's ever going to change men's behaviour? Because I think one thing that you do with young men is they gravitate to you, Scott, because you're basically a man. You're a man's man. All right? They don't want to hear from these new age sort of
Well, this is why we are, like, part of the reason why we are where we are. Most of these guys that are gravitating towards the NSN have probably grown up without any decent male role models in their house.
Yeah.
Mostly raised by a generation of single mothers. And I'm going to be honest here, Bob, I was raised by a single mum. You know, I went to 24 schools to finish year 12. And I mean, I've been around single mums most of my life, all of my aunties, most of my family. You know, I come from a really average background. So it's really easy to be led into bad directions when you're growing up around bad things. And so you've really got this generation of young men that are being told that they're toxic, that they've got problems, that they're intrinsically bad, that they're programmed incorrectly, that their genetics are incorrect. And not only that, you've now confused the heck out of their hormonal development with the introduction of some really bad shit over the years. This society makes really toxic stuff. And then add in a culture of drinking and all the rest of it. And we really haven't developed great men in this country. And I'm the first one to admit that, because the environment that we've grown these men up in. And so they gravitate towards strong alpha identities. And that's potentially why they're being strayed into either extreme left or extreme right to try and find validation for themselves.
Well, they think they're gravitating to, but most times, mate, if they're strong men, I'll put one thing about the NSN. If they're that strong men and they believe in what they're saying, why are they faced or masked up?
Well, they've been doing a lot less of that recently. Their event last week in New South Wales, they were unmasked for that. And a lot of their members have been doxxed for it, because a lot of these young guys now don't give a shit.
Yeah, I saw that.
They don't care anymore. They're past the point of caring. And the reason they're past the point of caring is because they have zero buy-in in this country anymore.
That's 100% right.
You've got kids, Bob. These people.
Well, mate, I've given 40 years to try and mentor on kids. I'll give you a funny story, especially young men. I tried to take on a few girls' teams. The parents didn't want me. This is only recently. I had two mums come up to me, and they're married. And on the side of the court, I'm very much an old school disciplinarian coach. I take that as a compliment. A lot of people, you're too old school. I said, great, fantastic. You're too new school. You just, like a lot of the new coaches in my sport and basketball, you can't yell at a kid, all right? You can't discipline a kid. You can't do this. And I'm going, what? It's just nuts. And then they wonder why they have no resilience. And then they wonder why they gravitate to other men. But these two mums came up to me, and I said, hey, listen, just preparing you, if you don't know, when I coach a kid, because this was their first game, I yell a fair bit during the game, and I'll run subs, and I'll put a bit of discipline into it. And they said, Bob, we don't care about your other coaching. The reason we brought our boys here is they need some discipline because they don't get it at school, and you're fantastic. So even some families and parents are starting to get, to that point. I mean, you go to a Victorian school now, if you're a parent and this is the insanity of the world we're living in. If your kid goes to school and he's a boy and he expresses a feminine approach and he starts talking to a teacher, they can guide him down the trans route, and they don't have to have a conversation with the parents about that. And before the parents actually even know what's going on, their kid's convinced he's in the wrong body and needs to become a female. And if you try and change that as a parent, you can go to jail. That's Victorian law now.
Yep. So is that the feminisation of masculinity in this country, mate?
Mate, I think it's sinful. Honestly, I just think it's sinful. I think God's giving you a body. You've got to come to terms with that. You have tomboys. You have tomboys on the girl side. On the boy side, you have boys that aren't into building or whatever, but they're into design or artwork or whatever. It doesn't mean they're the other sex. It just means they've got different interests. But we've got to this insane point. We can't even be who we are.
We can't even have difficult conversations about it.
Exactly. So how do we change? Here's the bigger question. We can talk here all day about that and the NSN and or whatever. This is one of the actually other reasons I want to talk to you. How do we bring the generations on the male side in particular together? How do we, like, a lot of the part that I'm also getting a bit pissed off with is Gen Z, and I understand they got the issues, but blaming the older generations. Now, I've got parents. My dad was born, my dad got born in a gutter. And that was because the carriage couldn't get them to hospital in time. This is in the early 20s. So, you didn't have ambulances, you didn't have cars and a lot of that. Most families were still having the horse and carriage, or just walked. Now, they grew up in the Depression. I always wondered why rabbit stew, for example, was a big part of the Australian cuisine growing up. And I didn't find out until Mum and Dad had their 50th wedding anniversary. And Dad was a very private man. He kept a lot of things to himself. So his dad bolted on him. His mum died after their last child, their 11th. And so Dad was the oldest person in the family. And he was the oldest child. And he was left to raise all these other kids. We didn't know. I used to bitch about my old man all the time. I didn't get on with my old man at all. We argued like cat and dog. And we got to the 50th anniversary. Me and my little brother, we're young adults by now, probably mid-20s, so like Gen Z is now. And we were bitching about what an arsehole Dad had been all through our lives. And my Uncle Ray came across, and he just hit me across the back of the head. He goes, "How dare you speak about your parents like that?" And I said, "Well, he's been an arsehole to me." He goes, he didn't know, we didn't know all these things about Dad. So Dad started going out with Mum just before World War II broke out. During World War II, Dad ended up in New Guinea fighting for the RAF. When he got leave, he met up with Mum, and this is what my uncle said. They would go around to all the orphanages that his brothers and sisters were at. There was about 6 of them. They'd collect them and then take them to the footy, take them to the films, do a good thing. Dad, before he was into his 30s, had already raised a family of 11. And then he had, silly bastard, 10 more kids, and he had to raise them. And he had to come back after World War II, build a business. It went bankrupt, built it again, didn't complain once, worked 3 jobs. Mum worked another job. They never owned a home because they were adamant they were going to put their kids through private education, because Dad said your education is the most important. Dad didn't own his own place, and it was just a bit of a dive down in the country till he was in his 70s. He finally got something, and that was getting some, I think, help from my older brother. So he did it the hard way, but he did it to what he considered was in the best interests of his family and his country. So if you want a real hard luck story, they've got it. And I think our kids have got to start hearing, yeah, you've got it tough, but you're still not the worst off generation.
I mean, I don't disagree, but you've got to, I take this point pretty seriously. I've raised 4 daughters, and and they're 15 to 21 now, and so nearly 22 actually. So I've been around this generation, I've raised them, I've grown up with them. Yeah. And this is the thing. I have a connection to the generation that you were raised around, right? Like, because we grew up with these stories. We spoke about it before, from the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s into the 2000s. Now, I got my first Apple iPhone III in 2007, the same year that Facebook came out in Australia. And this generation of kids don't know anything outside of the technology that they've been raised up around. Now, when I was born, in the 70s and throughout into the 80s, when I was a kid, and because I was raised by a single mum with no money, we had a black and white television that worked for about an hour a day for 5 years. And we watched Doctor Who and the ABC News. That was it, right? And that was as long as the TV would last for, before the tube in it went pop, and then we couldn't watch TV anymore for the rest of them. But I have grown up and gotten to the age I am now with the development of all this technology. And people go, well, technology is bad. It's ruined the kids. It's not that it's ruined the kids. It's an evolution of us. But the kids have got a different connection to the past. They don't understand it. I'm talking to you on a screen right now. This is completely normal for them. But we knew what life was like before that. You and I would catch up. We'd have a beer somewhere. We'd shake hands. We'd smell the environment around us. We'd feel the wind on our faces, and we'd have a conversation. I'm sitting in my office. You're sitting in your office, and we're not doing that right now. So we've got a generation of people that haven't had the ability to learn to communicate with other humans the way we have. And now that we're seeing the byproduct of that. I have a lot of compassion for these kids, mate.
No, I'm the same.
And from your coaching, I don't doubt that you are. But how do you get them to connect back to that past? I think that we've gone beyond the point where they could even comprehend what the past was like, because we sound like a broken record to them. Okay,
I'd agree with that. So then the next part of the question is how do we give them a better messaging for a better future? Yep. Now, we can't rely on the bloody politicians for this. And this is where I think you've got a gift. I think you've got a natural way of connecting. Now, I think I've just recently been coaching people in this generation too, so it's not like I don't know, and I get on really well. Like at Melbourne Uni, I was coaching guys at 21, 22, and that was only a couple of years ago, so they're Gen Z, and we got on famously. The part you're talking about is how do we get them then? We're talking they gravitate to the NSN. How do we get them to gravitate?
Well, what is the NSN offering them? I mean, if you ever think about it, right, like the NSN are
tell me.
They're an action-affiliated organisation. So for them, they go to the gym, they commit to more discipline, they understand organisational structure, they respect the leaders or the alphas within their group, and they're taught the ideology of the NSN, whether you agree with it or not. But what's appealing to the young man in that? The discipline and the structure. And so what we've got to do is we've got to teach these kids not to be disciplined and structured, but to actually learn how to do things. And so people go, what do you mean by do things? Well, you teach kids how to play basketball, right? Or you go through the coaching stuff that you do. I teach kids how to build things. And one of the most productive things that ever happened to me was learning how to make stuff. Like, how do you make things? How did you make that? And so in my opinion, and this is where I like to connect with people, is I developed my leadership skills from learning how to make things and then teaching people how to make things. And I found that to be a really productive life for me because it sits with my personality. So what we're teaching Australians here with this movement is how to get off their butts and how to engage. Now, what we're going to do then is we're going to teach these kids that it's okay to be involved in stuff. It's okay to have difficult conversations, and it's okay to confront your fears because there's nothing wrong with you. You're completely normal. And this society has cheated you, but we can fix that together. And that's what we're going to do going forward.
Do you think I think that sounds fantastic. Do you think we need, and Kenneth put this, I think, and I don't agree a lot now with a lot of what Kenneth said. In the 90s, I love Kenneth, but he's done what every conservative leader done. He's gone a little bit left with some of his stuff. But one thing he's consistently pushed at, which I actually agree with, and we had back in the 60s, like in the 70s, you had the the 60s and 70s, when I was a kid, you had the Army cadets at school. That taught you those things about discipline and structure and all that sort of thing, following an order. You also had the trade schools, which seem to, in a lot of areas, disappeared. One of the biggest regrets I have in my life is I never got myself a trade, even though I was raised by a person who had multiple trades. He sort of pushed me away from that. But I got in trouble the other day because someone turned around and said, our young men, it's disastrous that we don't have enough young men in universities. I said, get them out of universities, get them into a trade. They go to the universities, what they get taught. So Kenneth was talking about having a national service, like an Army Reserve, where they'd have to go in. And, the most maligned nation on the planet, Israel's got that with their IDF. The kids over there have to do 2 years of service. I actually think there's some merit to that to get our kids focused. And then you've got to give them some incentives and rewards at the end of it. You got to smirk. I'm not too sure. You agree? I think there's merit in it.
I think it's a hard thing for an older generation to compel a younger generation to go and do something they don't want to do. And having been in the military and, did my 5 years and gone through the training and the ups and downs and the rigmarole of what that career path is like, and it's not an easy thing to be in the military. It's not an easy place to be in. I'm not sure if I want to force anyone to do that. That wouldn't feel quite right to me. And I'm sure if you ask the kids if they thought it was a good idea, they'd all tell you overwhelmingly no. We might tell them that it's good for them. I must admit, though, that I love the structure and the discipline of a country like Singapore, for example, that has a compulsory national service. There's plenty of other countries around the world. Thailand's another one as well that has a compulsory national service. And it doesn't breed a bad person from that regard. But you've also got to have the right structure within your country to do it. The reality is the military does break people. People come out of the military broken. So if we're going to push a generation of kids that are a little fragile to start with into an environment that, and if we water the environment down to cater to them, is it really the military then? So I reckon there's a real balance in that, and I'm not sure that I'm 100% on board with it. Personally, for me, great thing to do, was the right thing for me to do. I think the pathway into a military career should be a lot easier than it is now. Because one of my daughters spent 9 months jumping through hoops and still hasn't got a solution on that one yet either.
Was she trying to get in the military, is she?
Yeah, but she's been trying to get into the police as well. So she's kind of been dicked around by both career pathways right now.
Well, what's holding her back?
Sorry?
What's holding her back?
Mate, it's the recruiting process.
That's what I mean. What part of the recruiting process is the roadblock?
Mate, there's a whole bunch of pre-testing to get through to before you even get to the physical stuff. But the processing of the administration, the paperwork side of things. And just to give you an example, when I joined the Air Force in early 99, I was 6 weeks from my very first inquiry to being on a plane at recruit training.
Yeah.
6 weeks. And you know, that doesn't happen anymore, Bob. Because you've got to, if you're going to sell something to someone, you've got to grab them while they're interested.
Yes, definitely.
Well, you're interested today. Okay, how quickly can I get you on an aeroplane and get you into recruit training? So maybe we need to have a look at the pathways options first, and then also potentially open up, if you're going to talk about national service, like why not open up nursing, hospitals, council? I mean, if you're going to talk about something that contributes to the country, I think we could open it up to a broader spectrum as well.
Well, so national service is probably the word. What I'm thinking of, and I should have given that a bit more thought. What I'm thinking of is not necessarily sending kids off to war, for example. So when I'm talking Army Reserve, Army Cadets, I'm talking, well, I understand what you're saying with military. There was one thing I brought up. So I don't know what you got it like in Brisbane, but down in Melbourne, we got this crime bloody rampage. Every block you walk around, you're always looking over your shoulder. I've got
look what you boomers created, mate.
Yeah, well, look what the boomer.
I had to get that in there, Bob. I had to do it.
I know. Hey, you're not far behind us. Gen X wasn't so much better then.
No, if we're going to fix it, mate, we're going to be blamed for it as well. So,
no, true. I actually on that. I actually don't think this whole Boomers, Gen X, Gen Z is helpful. At the end of the day, what are we all? What unites us all through it? We're all Aussies.
Yeah, but
we all want the best.
That's the class war and the generational war that's been foisted on us.
That's been foisted on all of us.
100%. But why has that been done? Because what it does is it divides us, and it makes us hate each other, and a divided population and an easy population to conquer.
I agree. It goes back to what you were saying before. Why is it happening? Because we're apathetic. You know, she'll be right, mate. That's all we ever do. Most Australians, this whole thing about everyone being politically active and all that, it's only a recent phenomenon. Up until probably Howard got booted and Rudd came in, we'd all go to an election, vote, and then we wouldn't worry about it for 3 years. We didn't really care. We just wanted to get on with life, and we had it good. We did. And that was our big mistake. Now, I'm one of the ones. I've always been interested in politics and military history, right? So I've got a bit more awareness of it. But I remember having these conversations with Dad back in the 80s. Dad always warned. He nearly predicted everything that was going to happen. And I thought back in the 80s, you're full of shit, Dad. And he goes, you got to be careful, Robert. On the left, there's these Marxists, there's things they want to tear down the country. They want to divide it. They're going to turn all of us against each other. He basically predicted it all coming through. And I'm sitting back after the mid-2000s going, fuck, that's right. Unfortunately, he passed away. I couldn't say to him, you were right. And but we were apathetic. But now we're at a point now. We've got to get to a point, and I'm not even worried about the politicians so much, where we can unite everyone. And when I say unite everyone, I mean you can't go back now. You can look back in that rear vision mirror at what we used to have. We don't have that anymore. The country's changed. And like I said, with those families that I have in Stonington, they're 2 generations in. And like what you just rightly said, they're Aussies. So the problem with a lot of the marches, so I've given you all the full credit where it's done. This might be you take as a slight dig. The problem with all the marches, and this is what I don't like with what Monica Smith's doing, for example, is whether they've wanted it or not, they've been tainted that they're not available to every Australian. So if you're not of an Anglo-European, and this is not your fault, but the taint there has been across that if you're not of an Anglo-European thing, you're pretty much not welcome. Now, I know that's not the case with the vast bulk of the people there, but that's the taint you've got. It's like Pauline Hanson and One Nation. They've been painted as racist when they're not. So you got to want to overcome that. And what you were saying before, I thought was really good. And I think you're the one individual in these march organisations that could overcome it. Monica Smith certainly can't. I don't think Beck Freedom can. I don't think any of these can. And one of the reasons you won me over is I saw you in your first march. You had, I think it was either an Asian or an Indian guy who came up and he wanted to say how much he loved Australia, got shouted down. And I think one of the protesters or people in the thing had a crack. And the first person I saw stand up and defend him was you. So I thought, there's something here that I can see in Scott that I don't see in a lot of these others. And then the other part I wouldn't mind finding out, the background story too, is Jared Rennick. So they came out and made out a big thing that he wasn't going to be speaking, but he got to speak at Brisbane.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I mean, let's start with Deboo, the Indian guy, on August 31.
Yeah.
I mean, the August 31 event, we had an announcement sent to us through a third party that the NSN, the National Socialist Network, were going to attend the Brisbane March, that they were going to speak and they were going to take the stage. That's what they said to us in their press release or their announcement to the Brisbane organisers. And so as a group, we got together and we went, that's not going to happen. And obviously we worked with our security team and QPOL on the day, Queensland Police, fantastic officers that we have up here. And we worked with them very closely to make sure that didn't happen. But what we had was about 20 NSN members in black bloc, dressed in black, turn up.
Yeah.
And they had about, I'd say, another 20 to 30 infiltrators through the crowd dressed in plain clothes. And so when Deboo got up on the stage, and people have said, you put an Indian on the stage, Well, the reality is Deboo is actually, I'm gonna cop flack for this as well, because
that's what we both
love to throw mud at this stuff. Whether you agree with it or not, the fact is he's an Australian citizen. He's been given a legal identity as an Australian citizen here. And so, when I'm looking out at the crowd, I didn't see a sea of white faces. I saw a sea of lots of different faces, lots of different generations. And the NSN guys with their infiltrators threw up a whole wall of hate almost instantly. Now, the thing about the dynamic of a march, Bob, have you ever been to a rally before with 10,000 people?
No, I would say no, I haven't.
So I
watched you on live stream.
There's a mob mentality there, right? And when humans get together, and look, we're talking thousands and thousands of people there. The dynamic is tight. It's in the sun. It's warm. And suddenly you've got all these people in the crowd that start going, boo, boo, boo. You're going to get other people in there that will, by nature, it's like if you're at a football match and people start cheering.
Yeah.
And so you might not realize exactly what's going on. The reality is that most people probably didn't really understand. We had an NSN guy charge the stage in clothes and grabbed the microphone and tried to hijack it. Now, security, police, we got a hold of that and we dealt with it. And we asked Deboo to get off the stage. I didn't organise for Deboo to be there. That was organised by someone else. And we copped an absolute hiding after the march for that. But I don't stand back or shy away from the fact that this guy was a legal Australian citizen.
You copped the hiding for what? For having him as a speaker? Or
for having him as a speaker and not allowing the NSN to speak. So the hiding for us was you let an Indian on the stage, but you wouldn't let Australians speak. Well, the fact was we didn't have an open mic in Brisbane. We don't believe in an open mic. And if the Nazis or the NSNs want to have an event and they want to speak at it, organise your own event. With your own permit, pay for your own stage and pay for your own sound gear.
I think that's what, when the March for Australia first came out, and from where I was in Melbourne, I didn't hear a lot from you because you're in Queensland. But I was on a podcast earlier this year, first podcast I went on, which is why it's actually my own. And it was just really innocent. To be honest, before then, I really didn't even know who the bloody NSN was. I wish I still didn't. I was oblivious to them. I'd heard of them, but, I'd never really came in contact with them much. And I went on this podcast and they raised it. So I gave my opinion. Well, my God, the rush, and what you get is you get all these bots. You would be getting them. They got 25 followers. They've been on thing. They're all anonymous. They all come at you in waves, and which I actually I find that a bit of fun because I sort of bat them away. But, I was a bit taken aback on how many people were claiming. Then you got to know, because of that, before the election I started to get to know the NSN accounts, the people who were NSN or at least NSN sympathisers. So sadly, I got to know them quite well. Because they kept coming at me, and they still do. And when the March for Australia rally started getting brought up, there was a lot of, what do they call it, those forums on X where the spaces. Yeah, and Beck Freedom was on one, and she got on Ben Fordham's show. Now, I heard her whole thing, and that was that space was full on NSN. It was just, I could not believe what I was hearing. Just the hate that was coming out. And the part that impacts me more is I know a lot of these Aussie families who are 2 generations in from overseas. I'll come back to them in a little bit of a minute. But that raised the red flag for me for a bit. And then I just kept watching, and then you saw more and more links. I wanted to go to that first march, but they got to a point then there was no doubt in my mind that was too much NSN links. There's no way I'm going to this march. I couldn't. For my upbringing, for my parents, they would turn in their grave if I went to something like that. And I felt that's really sad because I'm watching it live stream. I saw all the good people there, all the flags there, would love to be there. But as my fears presented themselves, all of a sudden you got Tom Sewell and all those idiots up there and speaking. So I was quite happy in the end I didn't go because I'm not too sure what I would have said. But if it was a purely Aussie thing where everyone was welcome, and again, I'll come back to you, I think you're the person who could lead this. This is why I reckon it's great you've broken away. I'll cop flack for saying that. Mate, believe it or not, I'm already getting flack for having you on the show.
Well, look, Bob, I appreciate that. But, I mean, look, let's be clear about this. Queensland is going to Queensland. That's always been my motive. And it has a different type of politics up here. It has a different type of culture. And we aren't New South Wales and we aren't Victoria. As beautiful as those places are sometimes, and quite often we see them in a negative way because they can be shitholes on the media up here. But Queensland is uniquely its own place. I don't believe that Queenslanders at heart, and I've been here for a long time now, are inherently racist. I've never met too many of them that really gave a shit what anyone's skin colour was. And having been in the military where everyone is equally worthless when you start, it doesn't matter where you are. You're all equally shit. And, have slept and worked alongside great men of different coloured skin, guys that I consider to be some of my best friends today, who I trusted with my life at times and who I knew would have my back if the shit ever hit the fan. And so how could you possibly look at the world through a lens of skin colour? I'm extremely uncomfortable with being a minority in my own country. I'll be clear about that, though. This is an Australian country, and I do feel that we are being pushed to the brink here, and that's what's creating all these societal fractures. And when you're in suburban enclaves that are literally now completely Islamic or completely Indian, I stand there and I go, okay, well, I'm not really sure that I didn't agree to this. And I'm pretty sure that my grandparents and parents didn't really want that either. And so how come we haven't been allowed to have a proper conversation about that? Because if you're going to bring in 100,000 people every 66 days now, every 66 days we add another 100,000 people to our population, I want to have a say in that. And you want to have a say in that. But because of the Liberal Party's inability to have difficult conversations, this is where we are. Because the cultural Marxists and the globalists, Bob, would do this in a heartbeat. They would have done it 20 years ago. They'll do it 10 years from now. This is their playbook, 100% their globalist playbook. And they are just reading from the pages going, import more people. We need more tax base. We need more bum wipers for the NDIS. We need more nurses. And that's the lie that they tell you. They'll tell you that the only solution to prop up your aging demographic is to bring in the subcontinent by the millions and then steal your country from you. And so that's the lie we've been peddled. And the conservative movement has allowed this to happen because it wasn't strong enough to say, yes, something's really fucking wrong here, and this isn't working for the majority of our people, and they were scared to have difficult conversations. So,
well, the last time we had that conversation was probably Howard when he said, "We'll decide who comes here and on what things they come."
He was talking about illegal refugees, right?
No, I agree with that, but that sort of opened up the gates. Then you get Rudd, then you get Gillard, then you got frickin' Turnbull.
As a percentage of our population, right, the number of public servants and government-employed people now has tipped over the 50% mark in our economy. We're at 53%. The jobs in our economy are now government-funded. I mean, there's never been a number like that in the history of this country. We're running an unsustainable public service and government-dependent economy that is completely and utterly propped up by an immigration Ponzi scheme of 100,000 people every 66 days to pretend that everything's fine. And so the message that we've got to get these kids to understand is you don't need to join the NSN to understand basic economics. And and if you want to have a future in this country, then you need to understand that this movement that we're working with here, this is a bunch of Australians that have gone, hang on, something's not right. Because, mate, my house here, I've lived in this house for 20 years. This house here went up 8% in 5 months in value. Now,
wow.
Great. I'm in my house. I've lived here for 20 years on a long enough timeline. You're going to make money out of the house you live in, right? Fantastic. Compounding interest, one of the great things of the world. However, I'm looking at it going, even I know that's wrong. Even I know that's wrong. I could sit here and go, oh, I'm making money. That's fantastic. And a lot of people think, oh, yeah, look at you. You own shit. And you got this. And all the boomers own the investment properties and you had it all really easy. I actually completely understand where these kids are at. They have every right to be pissed off. I'm surprised, mate, that they aren't burning shit down by now. And the reaction to this is the NSN, right?
Yeah, but we got to find a way past that one and towards what you're talking about.
That's right, but you've got to get them to understand the economics of this. At the end of the day, I mean, this is a huge cultural undermining of our society. There's no doubt about that. But from an economics perspective, the lie that they've sold you is that there's no other solution. That's the only solution we've got is to bring in more people. When the actual real solution is to be innovative, to be productive, to build things, and to completely gut the public service in this country, because no one needs to grow a public service when you're broke.
Mate, have you got onto you need to get on my if you haven't done it already, get on my website and look up my policy platform. I think you're going to love it. I'm just sitting here nodding in agreement with everything you're saying.
Yeah, but I guess where we fall apart is I actually don't believe in tearing this down, Bob, and building a republic.
I don't say. Well, I would prefer
a renovator who likes to repair things instead of tearing them down and rebuilding new things. And really, this is the guts of my building company: is we make old things look beautiful. And so,
well, that's a very smart thing.
I look at it and I go, okay, I can polish this thing. It might be a turd, but I can polish it and I can put some glitter on it and I can make it look pretty. So,
I think you're. There's an old saying I got from a very good businessman, a really good friend of mine came in years ago, and I used to bitch a lot, and a little bit why I've got into the podcast and write my articles and do all that. And when things were getting me down, I'd get a bit pissed off with the world. And he goes, Bob, you've got to understand one thing. And he goes, what? He says, and I used to bitch to him a lot. He goes, don't come to my door with a problem, come to my door with a solution. And I reckon that's one of the best bits of advice I've ever had. So on my policy platform, I don't really care. I just put it up there because no one else is doing it. And I want to get some conservative ideas out because I don't think it's actually that hard to listen to what you're saying and say, okay, that makes sense. All right, what's the solution? And you would do this if you went into an older house, you got to renovate it. You're making a plan. Okay, what do we work on first? What do we work on second? What do we work on third? So this is what, for example, Susan Lay's got to say. Okay, good, you've dumped net zero. What's next? Well, if I was Susan Lay's advisor, I'd say, you got to start talking about mass immigration, how you're going to fix it. Then you're got to start talking on about, forget owning houses for now, because this is where I am with Gen Z. And Gen Z's, if I'm not wrong, they're right, what, 25, 26 now? Is that right?
Yeah, born early 2000s, mate.
So I've worked with a lot of the Gen Z kids as they've come through. So I don't own my own home because of the business issues I had with you before. I don't have enough money to buy a home. I'm a renter. Mate, since just before COVID, I reckon I've shifted house 4 times. And I've been that lucky to get 2 of those places. I had two parts, one of 2 months, one of 4 months, where I actually had to survive homeless. Not because I didn't have a wage or whatever. Just there wasn't the market there for it. There was not enough rentals. You would go to a rental property, and everyone who does it now, whether you're Gen Z, Boomer, whatever generation, and there would be a conga line of 100 people walking in. You are up against, and the problem you've got is if you go up against an Indian family, not trying to be racist, I'm just talking facts, they not only have one family living in that place, they would have 2 or 3, and they've got about 4 wages coming in. And even though you're not allowed to pay rent up front, they will offer rent up front for 6 months. Yeah. You've got no chance as a single white Aussie like me.
Well, that's the cultural part of this, right? I mean, if you go live in India, you're pretty much guaranteed that as a lower to middle class family, you're going to be living multiple kids and multiple people in your bedroom, and you're surrounded by rubbish. The whole country is a giant rubbish pit. And I'm sorry to the Indian people watching this or anyone who's going to clip this later on and call me a racist, but your country is basically a rubbish pit. And so when you bring a whole bunch of people that live in rubbish tips and bring them over here to live in Australia, they think that that's perfectly fine to live like that. Put me in a 15-minute city, in a box, and I'm perfectly happy. But Australians weren't raised like that. We want normal houses, mate. And so
of course
if you're going to change the people that are here, you're also going to change the living conditions that they live under as well. And most Australian kids have recognised that there's something very wrong with that.
100%.
There's no way that anyone should be lining up like that at a rental inspection, but that's because of the huge housing shortage, because we pumped in too many people.
Between 2000, I was thinking this before you come on, between 2009 and 2015, again, I've moved house an awful lot. So I moved 3 times in that period. So over the last 20 years, I've probably moved 6 times. But in that time, I moved 3 times. In that first part, as opposed to second part, between 2009 and 2015, I would go to a real estate agent. Well, that looks nice. Go get the key for the inspection. Do the inspection. Came back. Yeah, I'd like to apply. Bang. Within 24 hours, I've got the place.
Yeah.
I go now, and you've got to apply for 50 places to get one. Yeah. And then you've got to go, and you can't even apply until you've gone to the inspection.
Yeah.
And you've got to go to all these inspections. It's an absolute nightmare. And it should never be that way in a country. We're living on a continent. We're not living on a small bloody, Denmark or Belgium or Israel, where it's 8 kilometres wide. We're living on a dirty, big freaking continent. We should, and this is my reason for the 10-year freeze on immigration, is not so much about, a white nation or white nationalism, all that. It's about freezing the whole thing so we can get our infrastructure caught up.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, how do we come up with a policy, an immigration policy that strikes the right balance? That we keep our culture, that we keep our heritage, but we will also welcome in people that have got the right attitude to building this country and making it a better place for our kids.
Well, I don't really care about an immigration policy. I mean, and look, let's be honest about it. I mean, and I appreciate the work that you've done around policy stuff there. I only care about Australia right now. I only care about our people, my people, and I want the best for them. And the best for them right now is to shut the gates, stop that immigration straight up, and then start to remigrate the 2.9 million people that are here on temporary visas, bridging visas, illegals. There's a ton of illegals here, and the students, the university sector. This university sector is an absolute demon, mate.
Yeah, no, you're not going to argue.
It's led to cultural Marxist undermining of our society, which has fragmented us into this horrendous place that's emerging right now. And if we don't get a hold of that, mate, we're buggered.
So can I clarify something for some of my people to be watching then? Because you've raised it. I was going to bring this up. That remigration you're talking about. So you're not talking about people who have been second generation Australians, what we're talking about before.
No, you're a legal citizen here. There's no way I'm going to say to you, you don't pass my racial purity test. There isn't a racial purity test to have here. The reality is bridging visas, temporary visas, and student visas are guests of this country. And that system is being rorted right now. And I'll tell you this because I employ people. I've employed a lot of people over the years, and I've had Indian kids working for me. They come here, they've finished the university, they get another year or 2 years to work here, and they are allowed to drive on their Indian license while they're here. Mate, and they don't. No, I'm serious about this. I've got.
No, I know. Mate, have you been on Melbourne's roads?
Yeah, mate, and so this is the problem. This is the problem. This is what your Aussie kids are up against in the marketplace of jobs right now and career opportunities. I've got kids who want apprenticeships. I've had these Aussie kids reaching out to me going, oh, mate, I'd love to work for your company. Okay, have you got your driver's license? No, I can't. I haven't got my hours up yet. I haven't passed the test yet. Okay, when do you think you'll get it? Oh, I've done 65 hours. I've got to get to 100. I've got to pass the test. Okay, right. So we've built these huge obstacles to get these kids on board. And I've had plenty of people argue with me about this, Bob, and go, oh, but kids are the highest statistic on the road, and we've got to keep them safe. And I get all that. We can wrap them in cotton wool and keep them as safe as possible. We could double the 100 hours to 200 hours. We could add all these layers of complexity to it. But Bob, like you, I got my license the day I turned 17 with 0 lessons. In the town that I lived in, went for the test, passed it, and I was a shit driver, but we all passed back then on the first test. And
I did.
And the reality is these kids don't have that luxury. These kids have got every right to be pissed off. So these Indian kids come here. The last one that worked for me, got his license by bribing the police officer $5 in Mumbai. There was him and 4 other kids in the car. They all took about a minute and a half each to drive. The copper got his $5 off each of them, and they all had a driver's license. That kid was over here driving on the roads here. Now, people will go, oh, but you're stereotyping, and you're saying that, you know, Indians are bad. And all that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that your laws in your country are shit. Our laws are really, really tight, and they disadvantage our Australian kids from getting into jobs. So, you know, year 11 and 12 at school should be about learning how to drive a car. You shouldn't be graduating year 12 without a driver's license. This is insane.
Year 10. In America, they start teaching it in year 10. Mate, I had an experience.
Permits at 15, and I would be aiming to get them on the road by the time they're in their 16s. And I would get them out of school, and I'd get them into if they want to do an apprenticeship at the end of year 10, work full time. I'm not talking about pre-apprenticeships at TAFE or any of that shit. I'm talking get them into the workplace, get them hanging out with good guys, get them hanging out with tradies like the guys that work.
Well, that's the equivalent of the national service thing I was telling you about.
100%.
We've got to find a way to get these younger people interacting with other generations, and trying to get that mentoring back in. Those role models that are going to show them a positive way to build their futures. I mean,
you know, mate, I've got a first year apprentice at the moment working for me who's struggling with the study part of that. They do it online. Online components now, instead of going to a block release at TAFE or through a training organisation. And, you know, he's struggling with it. And so day before, I'm sitting down with him looking through what he's actually studying. And I mean, I've been through this myself. I'm a carpenter by trade, a little bit different a few years ago when I did my qualifications. But 80% of everything that they're learning is safety. Great, I get that. That's awesome. We're going to be safe. Everything needs to be safe. We're all safe. But the risk matrix here is completely out of skewer. It's out of whack. I mean, you know, people have said to me, oh, you better check Scotty's job sites because he doesn't want to have his workers safe. Well, that's bullshit. No one wants anyone to die on their site. And we could all talk about what it was like in my day when I was coming through with no hearing protection and hanging off the side of buildings at 5 meters in the air. But that's not what we're asking anyone to do. And there's got to be a reality check here, because what we've done now is we've over-regulated and bureaucratized everything in our society to the point where you can't get anything done anymore. We've got a housing shortage because we can't get past the bureaucracy. We can't get anything approved. And we're bringing in tons and tons of people. The only thing that thrives in this economy is government revenue collection and paper shuffling.
No, you're not getting any argument on that. Actually, you touched on one idea. We probably won't get time because time's flying. Just a quick one on this one. With the bureaucracy you're talking about, and I couldn't agree anymore. You're in the building industry. If we could halve the red tape and the bureaucracy in the building industry, what impact would that have on house prices?
Well, but there's another part to that, Bob, because when you talk about the red tape and the bureaucracy, you've got the part that gets plans stamped, right? That's the approvals part. But you've also got to have the compliance to get those plans stamped. Now, so what we've done now is we've layered in what we call into the National Construction Code, which is the rules for how we build things in Australia. What we've done is we've layered in all of these requirements for thermal energy, efficiency, disability access, all of this stuff that we've put into a house now. So the house that you're living in there now, Bob, I could see the ceiling before. It looked like you got battens in there. It was probably built, it's quite old, right?
Yes.
You're not allowed to build that anymore, Bob. You know, the house that I own here was built in 1953. It hasn't moved. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's a wonderful old house. But I can't build that house for you. No one's allowed to build that house for you anymore because it doesn't comply. And so when you talk about removing the rules and the regulations, what we need to do is pull the building code back by about 15 years to probably about the 2009, 2010 level. And then you need to remove the requirements for local councils and building approvals through those local authorities. You've got to get rid of all of these different barriers that are in the way to get a house approved now. So pull back the requirements under the code and then remove the barriers for the approvals. And that will force builders to build stuff.
So most of these requirements, they're put in place by local council, or is it state government as well?
3 levels, mate. There's 3 levels of government involved in a house.
Yeah.
Your local council, your state requirements, and then your feds who have the National Construction Code. And as a builder, I've got to meet 3 different levels of government's requirements to run my business. So, it's since I started in 2009, the difference between 2009 and now, there is no comparison anymore. It's not even the same industry to work in. So when I saw the other day, they were calling about the Grattan Institute released a study saying if they built more high-resi stuff or high multi-level high-res stuff in inner city areas, we could reduce the cost of a house by $100,000 in 10 years' time. And I'm like, who comes up with this bullshit? Because in 10 years' time, this industry will look nothing like it does today because it doesn't look anything like it did 10 years ago. And so I can't even tell you what this industry is going to look like in 1 year's time. But I can tell you this, up to 10 builders a day in Australia are going bankrupt right now. As are 10 logistics companies a day. So building industry and logistics are pretty much neck and neck. And so when you spoke before about the building industry being a barometer of a good, healthy economy, I also look at the logistics part of that as well.
Yeah.
Because if we're not delivering stuff, then nothing's happening anyway. And so all of those things are putting massive price pressures on. And in an economy that's already, like the housing market's already massively overheated here because all we do is keep throwing fuel on the demand fire instead of dealing with the supply issue. But that's because this government doesn't know how to deal with the supply issue. It doesn't know how to fix it because it doesn't have any things in there. You want to talk about the real diversity and equity problem in politics is the fact that nearly 30% of our elected officials are lawyers. They're not tradesmen, mate. They're not tradesmen. They're not builders. They don't know how to build anything. They just know how to write more laws.
I think it was actually John Howard said this a few weeks back. They were interviewing him about it, and I thought he's bang on the money. He said it should be a requirement for any politician or even bureaucrat before they go into that field to be out working in the real world for 5 years. Do an apprenticeship, whether it's building, whether it's in tax accounting or something. Get a real job and work in the real world for 5 years and then stand for politics. And I thought that should be actually a requirement. Just like what you're saying, becoming an apprentice for the building industry. You've got to go through that apprenticeship to become qualified as a tradie. To get a license, you've got to go through a course to become it. Why can't we hold these politicians and bureaucrats to a higher account?
Well,
we've got to get some...
She'll be right. Our she'll be right attitude allowed these slippery eels to slide through, and now they're running the country.
When the slippery eels, are you talking about the bureaucrats or the politicians?
I'm talking about both, mate. The permanent bureaucracy, the swamp, the Australian
that's
swamp,
the worst one.
that never changes, whether it's Labor or Liberal in power. It's the swamp that's always there. And not only that, but they're completely beholden to the DEI philosophy, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
Programmed into that. If you waved a magic wand and Scotty was in charge of the country right now, I'd be pulling each of my ministers in and I'd be saying, over the next 18 months, we're going to gut your department by 30%. And they'll go, how am I going to deal with that? Don't know. That's your problem. Okay, you're an expert in accounting. You're running Treasury. Hello, Jared Rennick. You're running Treasury. Everyone's out there now going, I knew he was, Jared Rennick fan. Like, Jared's one of the smartest accountants you've ever met. When you're sitting there with Jared and you're having a conversation about economics, you go, holy shit, you're the smartest guy I've ever met. And so you go, here, Jared, you're running Treasury now. Find a way to cut costs by 30% because we don't need the Department of Blue Hairs anymore.
Well, I think if you can get exactly. I think if you can get, I'm a big fan of Jared. We've butted heads. He wanted to. There was once on a feed he wanted to deport
everybody, mate. So don't.
No, I know. He sort of got to counter that a little bit because he does himself a bit of a disservice, I think. I mean, it's even with what we're talking about, which I'll get back to. Hey, I've just looked at the time, mate. I want to go, before I get back into this, I just want to go, we're getting a few comments, so let's go through a couple.
I was going to say, do you want me to answer why Jared spoke at the event in Brisbane on October 19th?
Oh, yeah, sorry, we missed that. Yep, go.
I know we segued a little bit there. Well, Jared was always on the invited speaker list. And that invited speaker list, we were told to keep that secret and under wraps until closer to the event. QPS actually requested that of us because we had federal politicians, state politicians in attendance. And for the security reasons of the event and for their protection, they wanted that speaker list kept secret. Now, the New South Wales MFA organisation released that speaker list early. That shouldn't have happened. And at that point, Jared and Malcolm were both had committed to the event, and they were, Jared in particular got pretty upset about that, and he ended up in an online battle with a bunch of people, and he not wisely walked into that. And you know what it's like on X, mate. It can turn into an absolute swamp on that thing. And if you're adversarial and mercurial to start with, you're going to find yourself up to your eyeballs in arguments. So he managed to piss off a whole bunch of people. We were instructed in Queensland to not let him speak. And at the event on the day, we had about 50 of his political supporters from the People First Party. Great people. I've met heaps of them. Wearing their People First T-shirts. And they were there to support the march, the movement, Australia. And they were also there to represent Jared. Jared turned up. Jared was there at the event. He was at the stage when the speakers were happening. And it's like, this is Jared Rennick. He got 150,000 votes for the Senate position in the last election in Queensland, whether you like him or not. The guy was massively popular in Queensland and did a 6-year term quite proudly as a Queensland senator, and he was one of the finest politicians that ever came out of this country.
Absolutely, 100%.
And he was our champion during COVID as well. And so Jared's there. His fans want him to speak. Queenslanders love him. Jared got up and he was absolutely applauded by the crowd. The crowd loved him. He was the only politician who followed the rule of no longer than 3 minutes. Didn't do longer than 3 minutes. He said
that's pretty good for Jared.
And walked off, but holy shit, did the fireworks ignite after that? Because it was that night, we just pulled off an event, 10,000 people there. It was fantastic. Big event, a lot of moving parts, and it's not easy to put something like this on, folks. It takes a bit of work, it takes a bit of money, and it takes a bit of time. And so when that was over, and I'll get back home, and I'm still buzzing, and I'm excited, and it's midnight, and we're packed up and cleaned up and put everything together, my phone starts going off with people from New South Wales having a go at me for putting Jared Rennick on the stage. And there wasn't a single text message that said, congratulations on pulling off an amazing event in Queensland. It was long, huge paragraphs of drama and insults, and you've offended us. And it's like, I'm reading this just going, right. That's kind of like that crazy girlfriend that texts you at 2 a.m. going, where are you? What are you doing?
I'm only laughing because I had one of those.
We all had one of those. So I did exactly what you should do with that message. You went, piss off.
Delete. Yeah. No, if I could imagine. It was interesting because when Jared was going through that, actually, I jumped on and I got in the middle of
Jared, stop and shut up.
No, I actually defended him. And the reason I defended him, well, the reason I jumped in is, like I said to you at the start of this, I hate double standards. I hate hypocrisy. And I've got to say, there's a few there that I see seed into my criticisms of him being canned. And even at that stage, I was a bit pissed off with you because I thought, what the hell are they doing in Queensland? Why are they banning him? Because Beck Freedom had come out that week and said, well, she let Joel Davis and all these NSN guys get up and speak because of freedom of speech. And I'm saying, well, okay, well, where's Jared's freedom of speech then? You can't save it for one and not the other. And I included in my tweets a bunch of the libertarian politicians who are getting up to speak. And I'm saying, hold on, you guys are libertarians. You're supposed to believe in freedom of speech. If you believe in freedom of speech, you should go out in sympathy with Jared. So, well, if Jared can't speak, I can't speak. No one was doing it. And then, mate, and this is why you got my respect, I'm watching the live stream in Queensland. Who bobs up? Jared Rennick. I've gone, beauty. And I did have Jared lined up too. I hope he doesn't come on the show. I'm a big fan of Jared. I understand why he pisses people off. Sometimes he pisses me off. I've defended him really hard twice, and he's and in between that, I sort of took an opposing view to one subject, and he wanted to deport me out of the country, which is a bit hard considering my heritage. But anyway, it was kind of funny. But that was a credit to you, mate. That was a credit to you and the Queensland organisation, and a credit to you that you took a stand in the NSN. Before I get in these comments, I promised one of my followers, you blocked him. I said I'd bring this up for you. He doubts your sincerity about the NSN. So the reason he doubts your sincerity, this will probably give it away for you. You got a guy, I don't know him. I said I'd bring it up. His Twitter handle's Bender. Is he a part of the NSN, or is he sympathetic to him, or What's the story with Bender?
So, I mean, look, this movement up here in Queensland was initially Bender was the lead organiser. He was the one liaising with the New South Wales guys, and it was Bender who approached me and said, "Would you like to work with us and organise this event in Queensland?" I didn't know Bender from a bar of soap. I've never met him before in my life. I've never spoken to him. In fact, I never really reply to messages because you know what it's like. When you get over a certain number of followers, you really can't keep up with it anyway. It was a random fluke event. I'll call it the Almighty stepping in here. That got me to look at that message, and I reached out to him and said, "What's going on with this?" I'd already made some content a couple of weeks before and said that I was going to go to the event no matter what. Because I wanted the opportunity to put on a flag for Australia, and I didn't know Bender's history, but I've gotten to know Bender really well since the beginning of August when we kicked off the first event. And that guy is not affiliated with the NSN. He's not a member of the NSN. Bender has an online troll personality. He's like myself. He'll give people a hard time, and he's adversarial online. And not only that, but he'll shit stir people. And so, if using an image or writing something really upsets somebody, he will take that and he will do it. But you also got to remember that he's really good at working in those spaces on X, which is a really big thing. Those spaces can get a lot of people and a lot of intensity in there. And X is a great barometer of what's actually the people's feelings at that day in that moment. Things can flare up quickly and die down really quickly.
Yes.
So, and as I've got to know Bender, the one thing that I've learned about him is integrity, honesty, intelligence, and wisdom. The guy is, he's closer to my age. He's been around for a really long time. He's got a huge variety of working experience, especially in African countries, in mining places. He comes from a mining background and has a lot of affinity with the Aboriginal community as well. So it's like, well, how can you be a Nazi or an NSN guy? You've got so much affinity for the Aboriginal communities. And so it was that type of stuff that made me grow my respect for him and was to work with him. I'll be honest with you, Bob, this team up here in Queensland, when you've been around a while, as have you and me, we've worked with a lot of different teams and organisations in our lives. I have never seen a team as talented and as good at what they do as this Queensland organisation. And I say that with all sincerity because these are some of the most ethical, honest, and hard-working people I've ever met. And they're really, really good at what they do. It's incredible to work with such talented people. So this movement in Queensland, I realised that there was almost a divine shining down on it that put this group of people together randomly, and most of us didn't know each other, were put together by Bender to create this thing. And we did. And this is where we are today. So you go with this, is it this what are you calling your group now? Australia Marches. That's right. So, sorry, I've forgotten that. Is it just going to be Queensland orientated, or are you looking to eventually branch it out Australia-wide? Well, we never really intended to separate from March for Australia in the way that it unfolded. We didn't create that. That was pushed on us, the separation. What we did was we took the initiative digitally online, where we saw massive gaps in the organisation of March for Australia. The fact is, we were pushing requests up the chain for website upgrades, date changes, registration, all these type of things we were asking for. None of it was happening. So you can ask that question again. What's the point of just marching around? Great, we're showing force, we're up there, we're presenting to people, but are we capturing the data and are we helping people create a movement and a political lobby or a point of reference that actually has a focus for its energy? And no, that wasn't happening. So we built the website, we created the brand and went, okay, we'll work with March for Australia under this banner so that we can get people activated in Queensland. And that's what we did. And they took massive offence to that. And they thought that we were hijacking the whole movement to try and push it all over Australia. And that was never our intention. We actually cloned the website on their website so that it looked like it was still promoting March for Australia. And I bought a bunch of domains. Like, I own hundreds of domains anyway because I'm in business. And every time I have a good idea, I go, I buy the domain. I've got to say, smart. A bunch of shit ton of domains, and we bought some that are related to March for Australia because nobody owned them. Nobody owned them, Bob. They were sitting there, and I'm going, what if Antifa buy these things? What if some of them exactly? I couldn't believe that there was this massive technical or digital vulnerability in the organisation itself. And I'm looking at this going, this is not a business person who has organised this, and it is not a strategist who's thought this out and looked at the bigger picture here. So, and that's what we did, was we took the initiative on that. So we're not planning on running these events in every other city. we've had other cities reach out to us. That's a fact. We've had people from Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, and Melbourne, as well as multiple regions, reach out to us and go, "Can we run one of your events here with you guys? We want to support this movement, but we don't want to be aligned with the opaque nature of the leadership of MFA." And it is opaque. It is very, very grey up there.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I actually think, like, from a lot of people I speak to, and it could be a totally different bubble to, for example, the one you exist in and whatever. But I think there is some validity to it, because now there's just so many different groups organising their own marches. It feels like it's the kids in the playground a little bit. It's not it's not yours, it's mine. It's not theirs, it's mine. It's all that. I mean, I actually think the one opportunity I see, I reckon if you can make this really work in Queensland and take this the right way, I actually think it'd be far more effective. When you're going around to every city on the same day, it makes it harder to run an effective one in every spot. You're always going to probably have one state or two states that struggle. I think if you get this right, mate, my suggestion would be to take it on the road and do one city at a time, say one a month. Become Australia's version, I'm going to give you a really big compliment now, of what Donald Trump did before the presidential. You know, he would have his rallies and he'd go one city a month. I reckon that would be a far stronger event. And instead of a march, I would even, if you can get it this big, and who knows, I hope you can, you hire out a venue like he did and you get everyone coming in, and it really becomes like a real strong rally. That way, you're not stretching resources too much. You can have that professional group. You can have a proper list of speakers. One thing that's another turn off with some of these, you go there, you listen to some of the speeches, mate. I don't want to go to a rally and get screamed at. You know, I want someone like a Jared Rennick who's got some intelligent things to say that I can say, okay, this is what I want to grab for the future. That's one of your things, mate. When you start speaking, you're very powerful, and you make me want to gravitate to your message. But I hear some of these other ones, some of the New South Wales speeches. Oh my God, I had to turn it off.
We're developing up here in Queensland what we believe is an incubator for Australia's future leaders, and we are inviting anyone who thinks that they've got the gift to come and reach out to us and get involved in that incubator, because we want to help develop you to be some of the next political leaders in this country. And we're going to go to the 2028 election, and we are going to own ground in that election, mate. Now, people have said to me, you politicize this too much. You've gotten politicians involved. You just want to be a politician. Well, why would I want to move to Canberra and take a pay cut and all that? Because I couldn't think of anything worse. And to be honest with you, I've spent so much of my life working, but I was really looking forward to my semi-retirement in the next few years on a beach somewhere. And so am I in this fight now? Yes, because God wanted me here. And he put this team of, divine intervented people together up here, misfits that they are. And so we are going to build a political arm, and we are going to deal with this problem in this country. And we invite you along. Absolutely.
You're dealing that. People with their blessings. Hey, just quickly, because we are definitely running out of time now, before we get to comments, politics causes the problem, but the solution to that cancer of politics is, guess what? Politics. Because you can't change the country unless you can change the government. I can't remember which politician said
who's
that.
Trying to register a political party in this country right now?
NSN.
100%. And why is that? Because they know.
Because there's a vacuum.
And so when people from the MFA say to me, there can't be a political solution and you can't platform politicians, well, I go, well, why not?
How are you going to change things then?
Well, no, hang on a second. Why are you stopping people from wanting to be involved in politics? What is the reason for that?
Gotcha. I know where you're heading with it now. Well, hopefully everyone else will stop.
Let's get on about the opaque nature of what's happening here. That's one of the main ones that jumps out at me, because there has to be a political solution, Bob.
Yeah, no, I agree. Little wonder you got it. Let's go and let's see what we got. We might have some juicy questions here. I can't pronounce that name. Rambunctious list. I'll show it. They love it. They're Australia first. There you go, like that. Next one. I only know 2 people who voted Labor out of thousands.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It is. Well, it does make you question it, doesn't it? Yep. Got another Australia first times 3, I think that says.
Big love for that one. Australia first, mate.
Yeah. We've actually got a few comments here. I don't usually get many on here. So, mate, look at the impact you already have. What do we got? There is only right and wrong. We all know it deep down. If it's right or if it's wrong, it's that simple. Maybe. Amongst 100%. Scott is a great listener. You have to be with me, mate, because I can babble on. So good job. We need more genuine good blokes to stand up, raise voices, raise spirits. That's a good one. And that's from Katrina. Well done, Katrina. We need more genuine good blokes to stand up, raise voices, raise spirits. It's an amazing feeling being part of a movement that's making a positive change for all Australians. Very good, Katrina. I like that one. Oh, I don't agree with this one. But each to their own. You're all entitled to your opinion. Family, country, then God. I would be putting God in his right spot, but that's up to each and their own.
Pix is one of the organisers on the team up here in Queensland for us.
All right. Well, she put another smart for.
Shout out to Pix.
Do you know Katrina?
No,
she's posted a few times.
I don't know Katrina.
No nasties here in Queensland. We held and will continue to host the best marches. Yeah, I'm totally agree with that. Geez, mate, we got to for guys we're talking about we're becoming too feminized. I'm getting a lot of the ladies on.
Well, I guess, that's a funny thing because I had a really strong debate with a couple of ladies the other day who argued to me that, and this was their point, not mine, was that they didn't feel that women should be allowed to vote. I'm like, that took me a bit back by surprise because living with 5 women, my wife and my 4 daughters, I was really surprised to hear a lady say that. And they said, because we make bad emotional decisions. And I'm like, ooh, that's spicy. But, it was a difficult conversation to have because it actually challenged my conventional thinking as well. But it was also them reflecting on potentially their own emotional challenges and perception of things. So anyway.
Yeah, great.
Here's one about ladies. Let's be clear about that.
Here's one that we didn't touch on, but I think actually this is a big issue. We can be opposed to immigration as much as we want, but we've got to find a way to get people having kids again. I mean, our population growth is not good. Anyway,
I could fix that in a heartbeat, mate. It's that everyone makes out like these are massive mountains to deal with, but
they're not. Yeah,
they're not massive mountains. If you live in, listen, mate, I had kids when I had a house to live in. When I had, and there was never a right time. I could have had kids sooner. I was in my early 30s before I had children, and I could have done it sooner. And I wish I had have, because there's one thing I regret now is that I didn't have more children. I wish I had more. And so, if I can give you a home to live in and a great career and a great opportunity to thrive and grow in your country, you will have children. That happens.
Exactly. So you got to fix that. Labor, Liberal, and Labor, Liberal, and shadows. I'm just trying to see if we can get some questions. There's actually a lot here, mate.
Statements.
We've done all right. But there's not a lot of statements. Susan is still a puppet, so she doesn't like Susan Lane. The political system is based on horse trading and corruption. Agree. Let's call it for what it is. We don't choose the leader. The upper house does.
Susan Lane wasn't chosen by the members.
No, well, that's a big problem with our democracy.
I think that's a part of the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah. Listen, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong here. I think you gave him a shout out. I'm not a fan anymore. I used to be. But I give him credit on this one. John Ruddock was pushing this. I'm not, for different reasons, we don't have time to cover it today. But he was big on this, on democratising the Liberal Party. Actually, I haven't asked that. Why'd you get kicked out? Well, I'm trying to find a question.
For supporting Gerard Rennick. So after Rennick had left the party, after the 2 conventions where they basically screwed him over, and I went to both of those conventions as a representative of my branch here, because I got very, as heavily as involved as I could be. I watched them screw him over at 2 conventions. He obviously spun out to then go and form the People First Party. And I made one TikTok that said, do not vote for Gerard Rennick. I cannot encourage you to support this man. Do not vote for him. That's pretty much how I said it, Bob. And so then the Liberal Party saw that TikTok because someone dobbed me in and said, he's supporting Gerard Rennick. And I got an email, ding, and it said, you are hereby immediately terminated from the Liberal Party.
Is that in the
See you later.
Bastards. Is that in the New South Wales branch or Queensland?
Queensland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought Queensland would have been a bit better than that.
I mean, personalities like mine are a massive threat to the wet moderates, mate. So.
I love your personality, but we need more of that. But anyway, rambunctious, but running the country is not basketball. Well, mate, rambunctious out to you. If you ever ran a basketball association, you would get the best training in politics and running a business you'd ever get. Because one thing dealing with politics, I tell you what, you deal with parents who think their kid is the next Michael Jordan and try and explain to him why he's not. Good luck with that one.
Just give Rambunctious a bit of a shout out there. He's a great fan of the stuff that I do, a great supporter, and I appreciate the kind words that you've sent to me and messages as well, mate, over the last couple of weeks with everything that's been happening. So thank you.
Well, he's got another one here, mate. What do we got? You've got your foes. The politicians are basically out of touch with not only the youth, but the people they represent, and I'm not talking about Neuro-rebels. Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. More young people would join the military if they were not worried about being sent into the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you join the military, you want to get deployed. I'm not going to lie about it. You want to go to war. That's how it was for me and the boys. So,
Yeah, well, true, but
I wish we did.
I think we were just look. We all get caught up in this Middle East stuff. I just wish we would, and I think that anyone who does join would want to get deployed. But also, I just wish we would stop talking about the Middle East. I wish we would worried about Australia first in many issues. Middle East has not been our problem. We aren't sending troops there. We're not, except for bloody elbow recognising Palestine and all that shit. But we got far bigger issues, like we're giving away the country in Victoria. Anyway.
Yeah.
National service should be discipline-based, learning life skills beyond the family home. Yeah, that's your mate, Rambunctious. The labels are not helpful. There is nuance, pigeonholes, and not for elephants. That's Rambunctious, this one. I like that. I'm showing it. Well, that's a great line. The labels are not helpful. There is nuance, pigeonholes, and not for elephants. I'm stealing that, Rambunctious. I like it. And he's on again. He's having a good time. All right, let's see if we get a question. I haven't had a question. My mate, he was asking about Bender. I said, it's interesting, one of the things I like with what you did, Scott, is as soon as I asked you about come on, you're going, yeah, great. You have no idea how many people I've asked who I've had disagreements with or agreements with to say, listen, come on, let's chat about it. You didn't hesitate. So many people won't put their face up and have an opinion, have those difficult conversations you're talking about.
I probably disagree on a lot of different things, Bob. I don't doubt that at all. And our perspectives on things will be shaped by our own experiences. But this has been a great conversation. I appreciate your audience, and it was awesome to be able to do it. So.
Bender is a champ. There you go. He's got a supporter.
He's got a lot of supporters, mate. He has a really strong following. He's a great guy, and I do trust him. So.
Well, mate, the guy, I won't say his name because he actually hasn't come on today. That's what I was saying. I mean, when you were coming on, he had a crack and he goes, you got to look at this guy, look at this. And I said, well, listen, come on the show, send me a question. We'll bring it up with Scott. I'm sure he'll answer it. He won't answer it. He blocked me. And I said, were you abusive? He blocked you. And, which one? I've lost the thing.
Yeah.
So,
but in the last couple of weeks, mate, I mean, I've copped, threats to the family, threats to myself, threats to the business, threats to everything. So, I've been on a bit of a blocking rampage because, in all honesty, X can be a sewer, and when the sewer starts to emerge, you need to push the sewer back down the hole.
Back a bit. Well, you've also got to...
I'll just put this out there. If you want to be unblocked, don't be a prick. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And don't throw threats at me. And don't call me a traitor. You call me a traitor or treasonous to my country, I will literally, I have zero empathy for that. Like, you throw that discussion at someone else. I gave this country my hearing, and I've had so many knee operations now, I've lost count, mate. So I gave this place the best of bits of me, and I've paid a price for it. So I'm not about to let it go without a fight.
Well said. The other part too is, I'd say to everyone, it's pretty easy to be a keyboard warrior. If you're not prepared to put your face to it and front that person, and, say it to them, then don't do it through a third person. Get on here and have your say. And that's what you were talking about, those difficult conversations. And, mate, I'm pretty sure you're like me. I would love to get, for example, a young guy on who's leaning to the NSN and talk to him about it. I'd love to get Joel Davis on, but he would never do it. The other guy, I think you've talked to him. What was the guy with the Two-Face podcast, Scott?
Sam Bamford.
Sam, that's it. Yeah. I love his content. I reckon he'd be a fascinating conversation too.
Right, yeah.
So it's a matter of bringing people. We can all have, if you bring enough people into a room and you can take the best ideas they've got, you're going to come out with something positive.
Yeah.
But if all you're going to do is be on the outside of the tent pissing in, as the old saying goes, you're never getting anywhere. All you're going to do is be divided and disunited. You got to find that common ground, which I think is what you're looking for and certainly what I'm looking for. I'm excited by what you're doing in Queensland, Scott. I think it's a credit that you've split away. I think there can be some big things for you. Like I said, when I read that bubble thing, I'm going to wind us up now, mate, because I'm going to have to get running. But the last compliment, I hope you see this, what I see. My recommendation is for you to give some thought, and I'm going to finish on this part. I have I'm about to go coach their kids now. And, mate, any kid that walks through my door, I don't care whether they're Jewish, Islamic, black, white, whatever, if they're a kid who wants to learn basketball, I'll teach them, all right? If they're a parent who'll come in and treat us with respect, I'll teach them, pay their money, do all the right things. So I've got to know some of these families quite well. So, for example, I've got two Indonesian families. They're Catholics, and they fled Indonesia because they were worried about being attacked by Muslims. So I totally get that. If that was me in their position, I'd be doing that. So they've been over here 2 generations. It was interesting. One of the mums, I was talking to her about the marches. Oh, but isn't that a Pauline Hanson thing? So she's been indoctrinated to think Pauline Hanson's bad, right?
Yeah.
So I've actually had a couple of conversations with her about the Pauline Hanson, and I've actually even mentioned you in there. I said, you actually researched these people and listen to them and find out what they're saying. I think if you actually listen to them, I said, Pauline Hanson's a good woman. She's one of the few there that goes and fights for people like you and me, and there's no bullshit about her. You don't have to love her. I don't agree with everything she says, but you might disagree with it, for example, but I love the fact that she stands her ground and fights. I brought up you in the context. I said, Scott puts out all this TikTok stuff. He talks to the young generation. We don't. How much of us talk to that? I had another Chinese mum. Well, she's not Chinese. I shouldn't say it. She's an Aussie with a Chinese background. All right. You want to know what her biggest issue was? And these people will go and wave our flag on Australia Day. They love Australia. I was talking to her about China and the CCP and what are the differences between China and Australia. She goes, Bob, we love the freedom of speech. We love the country. We love a lot of the way of life. But she says, the problem you've got in Australia is crime. She goes, in China, there's no crime. They're tough on it. Over here, you let them do what they want. And you know you know what they're most against a lot, who they blame the crime on? Mass immigration. Seriously. Well, there's fertile ground. If people got out and started talking to these people, they all have faith. They all run a business. They want a better life for their families. They want to give them a good education. They love what Australia's given them. They're fertile ground for any centre-right party that want to actually get that message. And I reckon you could give them that message, and I reckon you could get a whole bunch more people onto your movement if you want it.
We'll see how we go. And that's the plan.
I honestly think it is. If you branch that out, I think you could make this a lot more powerful than you think.
Yeah, that's really.
So anyway,
that's nice of you to say that, Bob. But look, these are a once in a lifetime movement. These things don't happen easily. You've not seen many of these happen in your life either. In my opinion, this is a hangover from COVID. Still, there's a lot of resentment out there. There's a lot of trauma out there. There's a lot of really hurt people in our society, including these kids. Because these kids went through the COVID lockdowns as well. Remember? And you know, I saw what it did to my own daughter's sports and their side hobbies and all the rest of it, and what it did to their personalities. And so we've got a generation of traumatized people out there that we still haven't had a reckoning from what happened during COVID yet. And so I think that this movement will continue to grow, and I think that there's going to be a strong groundswell for it, and we really appreciate your support for it, Bob.
Pleasure, mate. Hey, buddy. Anytime you want, if you want to make this a regular thing, because there's plenty more to chat, but talking in my training, I better get into my car. We've been going 2 hours, but great chat,
most builders, I'm spread pretty bloody thin at this time of the year, mate. But
no, mate. The invite is always open. If you've ever got anything you want to say or promote, just give us a holler. We'll get you on here. We'll have another chat. There's plenty of ground to cut. I knew it'd take a while. I just knew it. We both like to talk a bit, which is good. Having those conversations, you can't get anywhere if you don't have the conversation. So, mate, good luck to it. If I ever get up Queensland, we're gonna have to catch up and have a beer, I reckon.
Well, I'm a non-alcohol. I don't drink at all, mate. I'm a Coke.
Well, you can have a
fan now, so Coke Zero.
You can have the non-alcoholic beer. I'll have the alcoholic one, and you can drive me back wherever I'm staying.
No worries at all. Happy day. Good job, bro.
All right, mate. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.
Good luck, buddy. See you, mate.